Well, hello, boys and girls, and welcome back for part 2 of Greenlock for Node.js. I'm going to continue right where we left off. So I'm here SSH'd into my remote server, and what we're going to do is instead of just running that example config right out of the Greenlock directory, we're going to create an Express app and then do change that configuration so it's not just optimized for brevity, but it's also more explicit and more dynamic. So I'm going to go ahead and create my project folder, which is going to be serve, because I think that sounds trendy, yeah. And then I'm going to do npm init so that I have a package.json, and that's just so that when I do npm install Greenlock Express and Express, that it doesn't gripe at me. And then I'm going to copy our previous Greenlock example config directly, verbatim, from top to bottom here, and I'm going to paste that in as index.js. And the first thing I'm going to do is go down to the bottom where we have our Express app, and I'm going to pull this out. And we're going to put it in its own file so it looks like a normal Express app that you're used to. Now, the thing that I want to make you aware of is that Node's bare HTTP module function signature looks like this for HTTP, HTTP2, well, with Speedy, and HTTPS. And so if you want to require an Express app, you do it just like you require anything, but you do have to export it, and I'll show you right now. This might be what you're familiar with. And then down here at the bottom, you have your app.listen. And the thing that I don't like about this is that the only way that you can get access to the underlying server object is through this in that listen method. And it turns out there's a number of occasions where you'll need access to that. And we'll talk about that in a future video. So what we need to do is just simply add module.exports equals app. And then we can either remove this app.listen or wrap it with require.main long equals module. And then what that means is that if we run this file directly, it'll still do the localhost server like you're used to, but now we can also require it into a real server without it trying to start a server on its own. So the next thing that we need to do is just modify this config. So I'm going to get rid of these options that they could be used as default options, but I'm just going to get rid of them. And then we're going to replace this array instead with a function. And the function takes ops, certs, and CB. And this is how approveDomains is intended to be used. The array is just a shortcut which creates a function that validates against the array. So let me go up here. We got a couple other things to change on the way up. I need to change back to the staging environment, and we need to actually require Greenlock Express normally rather than assuming a relative directory. Now we'll go ahead and create this approveDomains function. And in the ops, what we're going to get is potentially some of the options that were defined down here. In this case, we removed all of those, so we're not going to get any of that. It's just going to be ops.domain. Whoops. There we go. And what we're going to need to do is to make sure that we validate that domain either by lookup in a database or fs.readdir /serve/www/domain name or whatever it is to make sure that we actually do want to approve it. And I'll talk about spoofing in the next video, which is going to be around security and mostly stuff that Greenlock is handling for you. But the first thing that we're going to do is just create our error callback. So we're going to say no config found for, oops, that was a space in the wrong place. And it rhymes, so it must be true. That's kind of weird. And then I'm going to go ahead and do return. Now we're going to put this into an if statement. I like to handle my error cases first. So there we go. And I'm going to check if it doesn't match against. I'm just going to create a regular expression for the two domains that I want it to match against. So I'm going to make this an exact match. So it's going to have a caret and a $sign, so it matches begin and ending exactly. And then this prefix ... is going to be optional, and then test.people.family. There we are. So if we don't match that regex either of those two, and this is where you might connect to a database and say, if I don't have this domain in the database or a wildcard for this domain in the database or on the file system, whatever, then I'm going to return this error. Otherwise, we might have pulled from the database the email address that's associated with this domain, and they've accepted the agreement. And this is actually only necessary if there's some sort of level where they need the agreement with Let's Encrypt themselves. As a hosting provider or whatever, you are perfectly legally fine to only put your, in fact, it's preferred just to use your email, and then to relay the information to them as needed. Anything that's given to you as needed and themed in the way that you prefer it to be. So also, I'm going to do ops.domains. This is the list of domains that should be listed on a certificate. So if it were a renewal, so search is null unless it's a renewal. If it were a renewal, search.altnames would have the previous altnames that already exist on the certificate. So you might, well, most of the time you probably don't even need to use that, but you could just use that, or you could pull from the database or the file system or whatever it is where you will know what domains are associated. Like for me, I would like to have the www, the API, the assets, the CDN, like all those subdomains. I just kind of want on the same certificate because they're all grouped together and that makes sense to me. Then this time we're not going to return an error object, but instead we're going to return options ops. And I don't remember why I did it this way. It's just a legacy thing that we're stuck with now. So it is what it is. I might rev it in the next major version so that you just return the ops object and there is no separate search object. But that gets returned, and now we're done with our approveDomains callback. So I'm pretty much liking this file. The only thing that I want to change is what I complained about with Express is, yeah, for convenience, I give you a listen function as well, but at least you can do server equals Greenlock.listen and get that server instance. And when we talk about WebSockets, not in the next video, but in the one after that, doing a WebSocket server with Greenlock, that's where this will come into play. All right, so hopefully that was useful and you got some good value out of that and weren't too disappointed, because I know a lot of you are really anxious to see this video. I hope that it lived up to your standards. If not, just leave angry comments or whatever, and look forward to the next video. Oh, actually, wait. There's probably one more thing that we should do before I say goodbye. Let's get rid of our previous certificates so that they're not in conflict with this, and then actually run this so you know that it works. So let me open up another tab, go to test.people.family, and see, oh, look at that typo. Let's go ahead and fix that. And here we are. Of course, it's giving us the security warning because we're on the staging environment with staging certificates. But if we look, there's our common name, test.people.family, and then both of our alt names listed right there. So there you are.